It's easy to say things like there's no wrong way to hit a snare drum. If the sound you get is working for you, then that's an okay way to hit that snare drum. But the fact of the matter is, there's more than one way, and we need to master them all. We're coming to this today because of hundreds, maybe even thousands of comments from viewers just like you that express a sentiment that there's something to be afraid of when it comes to experimentation, and that it's safer to just stay inside the narrow, small box that we're comfortable in and not really look outside to see what else is available. Today, we are taking this to the realm of rim shots versus striking the drum in the center, why you need to master both of these things, and also be able to identify which one of them is going to get you the results you're after. Now, before you lean back and say, oh, a video about rim shots, this is not a video about rim shots. This is about understanding how to use your drum, and there are going to be pitfalls and possibilities in this that I guarantee you haven't thought of in the course of figuring out how to get the sound out of your drum that you're looking for. Let's dive right in and start off with the Supraphonic setup unmuffled, and let's hear the sound of dynamics with rim shots versus striking the center of the drum. Right out of the gate, the first thing we want to talk about is the actual playing of the drum, the technique that we're using and the sound that's coming out of it. The first thing that a lot of people think is that striking the center of the drum is for playing quietly and rim shots are for playing loud, when in reality, quiet rim shots are fantastic, and bashing the drum in the center with the butt of the stick also elicits a great result. Let's hear both on this drum and see how they compare. One of the factors that can make people uncomfortable with rim shots is the fact that depending on where you hit the drum, it's going to sound significantly different. There's a whole palette of possibilities. Don't forget that there's also a whole lot of options in the rim shot realm with the wires off that take us in a completely other direction. Before we move on, in my experience teaching playing, just in a general sense, if a player is struggling with playing consistently in the center of the head or struggling with consistent rim shots, it tends to be an issue with the height of the snare drum or the overall angle of the drum. So depending on if you play matched grip, traditional, how high you sit, it's really worth experimenting with the height and angle of the drum to make sure that it's working for you and not against you. Now, if you're wondering why we started off with a wide open snare drum with a lot of overtones and all of that, it's because this gets us a really great full range rim shot sound that, as far as I'm concerned, is the de facto rim shot sound that I expect to hear out of a drum. When we start to move into trying to control all of the stuff that we're hearing, we start to lose some of the great parts of this sound, which is another reason to get comfortable with your strike zone before you start to do, let's say, some extreme muffling. Let's hear the Supra with the same exact tuning and the same exact wire tension, which is important, but with a very heavy bit of cloth muffling on top of it. This is an excellent dovetail into the fact that heavy-duty muffling makes for really fun sounds in the center of the head that might have too many overtones if we didn't do this, but what are we losing when we start to play rim shots on this? In the spirit of inclusion here, it sounds like a drum. We're not going to call this a bad sound.
It's a bad sound.
Ben says it's a bad sound. I don't really like this sound. It doesn't fit in a mix for me. It feels really strange to hit. And as far as the dynamics with the rest of the kit, it's not really making it happen in terms of volume and presence. So this to me is getting definitely into the realm of an unusable rimshot sound. This is another drop in the bucket on the side of learning how to tune in a way where you can use minimal muffling to get the sound that you're after, just in case you want to have more technical options or tonal options in a performance or practice environment. The same goes for aggressively pre-muffled snare batter heads. If you're using a head that is this really massive, like in terms of thickness, and maybe even has muffling rings around the edge, you're dealing with a similar situation. You're trying to move a lot of mass, you're going to lose high end, you're going to get boxy, especially if you start to tune it high, which sounds good for rim shots in general. And overall, getting away from all of that and getting comfortable with something thinner and more traditional, and then slowly adding things to it is going to get you a lot more options. Now, what if we want to do a really, really deep tuning? What if we want it to sound really muffled? I mean, can we have both? This drum, we love it. It sounds fabulous with this kind of tuning, big fat back right in the center, but what happens if we suddenly are moved to play rim shots? Again, spirit of inclusion, there are no wrong sounds. This is pretty tough. We're not getting much out of the drum. We're not getting much wire sound. We're hearing the rim on the stick clacking when I do this. And I promise, I tried my best to make it sound good. I'm not playing it wrong to make it sound explicitly terrible. This is fundamental to having a drum tune this low with a tremendous amount of muffling that we have purposely sorted out for fatback, center of the head playing. Won't do it. Just to really drive this point home, we're going to turn the wires off and play a little bit that way. Okay, that's enough of that. Taking the wires out of the equation really shows us exactly how much we are not getting a good rimshot sound out of this. Sometimes snare wires can obscure what's actually happening with the drum, which is part of the reason why we often tune with them off in the first place, and this is abundantly clear. Once again, we've proven that muffling with a low tuning really helps to get that beefy, fat center of the head sound. So why do we need the overtones when we're playing rim shots? When we are playing a rim shot, we're activating a lot of different parts of the head, and sonically speaking, we're getting after the fundamental and everything else it has to offer. And that high end blending in is giving us the power of the rim shot and also the sustain that gives it a little bit more longevity and fatness. When we start to add mass to that head and control or even completely subdue those overtones, we're getting rid of a very fundamental part of the sound of a rim shot that makes it cut through and it gives it that power and that clean backbeat when we strike it that way. What this means for us is that no matter what we think of as our prescribed muffling method, if we want to get a great rim shot, beyond just being able to hit different parts of the head and get a really great dynamic range out of the drum, we also need to pay attention to just how little muffling we can get away with and retain the good rim shot sound. It might be a little bit of tape, it might be half of a gel, it might be a whole bunch of tape. It really depends on your circumstance, but never start with a ton and decide that that's fine. Work up to it slowly. Out in the real world, choices like this have a lot to do with the sound you want to make and also a lot to do with the environments that you might be playing in. You might think that rim shots are unacceptable in an environment where you need to be quieter, but that really just means we need to master quieter rim shots. On the other hand, if we need a really powerful but low and full sound, we need to get into tuning and muffling specifically for being able to really throttle the center of the drum without catching the rim and have the drum speak and not choke out. Both of these techniques can work in a wide variety of situations, and as far as we're concerned, mastering both is a fundamental necessity for being able to express yourself, and making sure that you understand the powers and the limitations of both will allow you to use the drum to its fullest potential. Some of what you heard today may be reinforcing things that you already know or do in your playing. Some of it might have been brand new. The best thing you can do now is take this information and immediately put it to use with experimenting with your drum, playing that drum, making adjustments, and seeing if it moves towards something that's going to make you even happier when you sit down to play.